Welcome to episode 5 of The Boost with our guest, Avivit Fisher from REdD Strategy. Let's go. All right, welcome to episode 5 of The Boost. And I'm so happy to be here with Avivit Fisher from REdD Strategy. She's the principal and marketing strategist at REdD Strategy. Avivit, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Thank you. It's great to be here, Steve. It's good to see you too. Can't believe we're going to see each other in person in September again. I'm looking forward to
No.
it. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, me too. We got to see each other in November, I think was the last time at the Mental
Yeah.
Health Marketing Conference. You were a speaker. You did a great job talking about marketing to people with trauma. And since that time, our audience has grown a lot. So maybe we talk a little bit about that, in addition to bringing you back this year to talk about people, profit, and promotion and some of the synergies there. So I'm really thrilled to have you on the show here, episode 5. We're smooth sailing, and before we kind of launch into that, I do want to jump into what we do every time with every guest, which is the virtual hug and the shameless plug. So the virtual hug is just a moment of gratitude. We'll start there. Tell me something or somebody you're thankful for today.
Oh my God, there's so much. I'm thankful for, like, right now I'm looking at the window and I see green trees and spring and warmer weather, and I'm just thankful for that. I'm done with winter. I can't handle winter anymore.
Yeah, I think my last 2 or 3 guests have said almost the exact same answer, and I'm right there. I've always think of Louis Armstrong's "It's a Wonderful World." Like that song plays in my head because it's so beautiful. I'm looking out a similar window, and it's just gorgeous outside. It's green everywhere. So, yeah, that's a wonderful thing to be grateful for.
Yeah, and it's very relatable, right? It's very universal.
Yeah, we're all going through it. Definitely. Well, get into the shameless plug. You're doing beautiful work around marketing strategy and helping private practices and therapists get better about what they're doing. And it always comes best coming from you. So brag a little bit about the work you're doing and what's going well for you.
Sure. So I founded my consultancy, REdD Strategy, and I'm currently working only with private practice owners. I help therapists who are building a private pay caseload or transitioning from insurance to private pay, a lot of them, to attract clients to their private practice and build a thriving business. So I really focus, I work with clients one-on-one. I coach and I consult and I focus on strategy, like the name of my company suggests. And that goes basically to the basics of marketing, figuring out your niche, figuring out your therapy brand and your main message, and then figuring out the plan to attract clients. And so the plan can be very specific, step-by-step plan. So I really enjoy this work because, you know, there's such a vast need for therapy. And when my clients come to me and they're kind of like sometimes feel discouraged about the fact that they can't attract clients, I'm like, I'm just so excited for them. I'm like, you don't understand. It's everywhere. You will attract clients, you will bring them in because unlike with any other business, you don't have to prove that the audience needs it. You don't have to prove the need. Like the need is there, it's available. So that's what I do. I also try as much as possible through the content that I create. So I write a weekly newsletter called Therapy Business Brief. And the concept behind it was, I want to show therapists. First of all, I source the most interesting content and news that is relevant to the business of therapy and relevant to mental health. And I kind of want to sort of connect the dots to show the business opportunities based on what's happening around them. So I really enjoy doing that. And I also give a little bit of marketing advice every issue I send out.
Mhm.
So that's been a very exciting part of my work.
It's so great because a lot of therapists or private practice owners, well, a lot of owners do have some skepticism around profit or sort of a lack of belief that they could fill up their books and their calendars with private pay clients. And not to say that's for everyone, but if that's the way you want to
Hmm.
go, you get excited when people come to you sort of with that doubt in their head because you know the path forward from a strategy perspective, and you are very much positioned as a upfront strategist where you're
Hmm.
giving them the tools that they can then go execute some parts of that. But that's neat to see and hear because it's more than marketing strategy. It gets into market strategy upstream. We were talking about earlier. Is there a method to your name, REdD Strategy? I mean, it sticks in my mind. I mean, the color is powerful and you use it in your logo mark, but is there a strategy to how you named your company?
Oh boy, so I was really agonizing over a name when I started because so I come from the marketing background and everything, and I just wanted it to be the right name, and I probably shouldn't have spent as much time as I did, but I wanted it to represent my process really. And RED stands for research, evaluate, define, and design. And this is the process that I go through with really with everyone and with myself as well when I've been building my business. And red is my favorite color accidentally, and I have
Hmm.
two red-headed boys, so like it's
It's in
it
your
just made a
life.
perfect sense for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think there's a big color theory around, the colors that we choose. So it makes sense. What about when you're doing that for another company, or maybe they just need to do it themselves? You had a great LinkedIn post just recently about sort of naming a private practice, and that can take a long time. But it's worth it. And you talked about envisioning the future and defining what you'd like to be known for.
Mhm.
What are some of the quick tips for somebody who's maybe trying to do that on their own? There's probably somebody right now who this weekend is chewing on a name, but what would you recommend they do?
Well, first, really envisioning the future is important because I know I've heard stories of people naming their private practice after their own name, and then
Hmm.
they try to sell their private practice, and then it becomes complicated, right? So if you want to sell your business in the future, or maybe if you don't know where it's going to take you, probably staying away from your name is a smart idea. On the other hand, if you are trying to build your own authority, if you're really building a personal brand, it might make sense for you to really name your practice based on your personal name. So that's a step one. And I think people don't dedicate a lot of time to thinking about something like this. And then people tend to like fall in love with a concept or a name without really trying to understand what they would like to be known for, because it's scary, because to understand what you would like to be known for, it means that you need to kind of think about your niche or think about the perception that you want to have in the area. But a simple way to approach that, like for example, if you are a therapist in a not a big urban area, like maybe in a small town or in a rural area. Maybe you want to be known as the local therapist. So maybe the
Hmm.
location where you live, um, has a big, is a big part of your brand. Or maybe if you are working with a certain method, that can be a big part of your brand. So really trying to understand what you would like to be known for, and really remember that, your name is not just the name on your business card, and your name is not just the name on the door of your office. It's also online. And as much as it's like jumping forward a few steps, being specific is important online for your SEO, being specific, so people understand online, because the attention span is small and the algorithms are kind of like trying to figure out how to rank your page based on relevance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so that's an important thing. In that way, actually, I think that either location or a specialty wins, right?
Mm.
And then there's a category of being metaphorical, right? Like a beautiful metaphor, like maybe you fall in love with that, and which is fine as well. But you have to understand what would be the shortcomings. It might, of that people would perceive it the way they would perceive it. You have no control over that. So
Mm-hmm.
naming a private practice should be much less of an emotional thing and more of a analytical strategic thing, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Metaphors can mean all sorts of things. Words get really fuzzy and cloudy pretty quickly. So, yeah, the metaphor situation can easily sound like a spa or something, very quickly, in terms
right.
of the words, even some of the clear words like wellness that, we're using today. Like, it's very murky. And that's a great point too about deciding how much you're building a private or how much you're building a personal brand in terms of your
Hmm.
name and if you're going to be authoring books or doing speaking tours. So thinking as far down the road as you can about what's the end game, and is this a company I want to sell someday, or is this going to just be something that's in the family forever, and we're all going to be doing this as long as we can foresee. So yeah, that's all helpful, and not surprising coming from a marketing strategist like you that you have some good tips. And you've been doing this 10 years, at least under REdD strategy, just about 10 years. And, I think I didn't name this conference that I do, the Mental Health Marketing Conference, but it's certainly a clear name. It is very niche.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because when people are looking for conferences around marketing and mental health, bam, we show up. And we used to own like the first 2 pages of Google, and I still want to show up in Google, but I'm also celebrating that there is a lot of money being spent on those keywords, on mental health marketing these days, from a lot of different types of creative agencies and other organizations who have noticed the need and the demand. So it's actually something I celebrate, because we're still growing at a really healthy clip, and we're here just to support the industry. So to see people out spending on SEM and Google AdWords and things like that is great. What have you noticed? Like, what's over that sort of arc of time? What if you looked back when you started and now? What's the big macro sort of changes or trends that you weren't seeing back then that you are seeing now? Like, where do we really need to be thinking differently compared to when you started?
Yeah. So I actually found mental health marketing conference by accident because so I didn't start REdD strategy with an idea of working with therapists only. I wanted to work with service businesses, but I didn't. I only later decided to focus on therapists. But when I was contemplating working with therapists specifically, I had a kind of a hunch that it would be a good move for me. I thought that there was going to be a good opportunity, but I really needed to validate this this idea. So this
Mm-hmm.
is where your conference came into play, because I remember I was looking for, I was like, there are other people that must be doing stuff like this. So there are some people that were talking about marketing in the mental health space, and there were private practitioners who have successfully built their practices, and they were teaching other private practitioners about that. But it was not like there was not so much competition. So I was feeling like I was kind of, uh, I didn't see a lot of competition there. So I went and I was like, well, if there isn't a lot of competition, it can mean two things, right? It's either it's not needed or it's just very new.
Yeah.
So I saw the website for your conference, and I booked a flight, and I went as a like an attendee because I wanted to see what it was about and learn. And I got there and I heard speakers, and some of the speakers are, I stood out to me a lot. And I thought, well, there's a huge potential here. So when I went there first, I would say it's almost 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In the 5 years, it went from a big potential to something that is viable, and a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are, um, sort of shifting from, you know, serving like small business owners or general markets to specifically mental health. And as I'm writing my newsletter every week, I read a lot of articles. Like this is the process I go through. I go through a lot, and I see the changes. And there's a lot of innovation. And COVID was very instrumental in that, I think, because it brought a lot of awareness and everything. And also the fact that telehealth became such an important part of it. Because before it was sort of like some people, some therapists did telehealth, some didn't. But now it's just much more available. And I think there were a lot of startups that saw an opportunity with there, right? So there's a lot of business opportunities. So I've seen it grow a lot um,
Hmm.
from when I started, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like there's also, or related to that, there are a ton of niches popping up as we get smarter about what mental health means and as we're more nuanced about what it means. So
Hmm.
I'd say, yeah, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we're probably talking about talk therapy, and now there are apps and telehealth and tech companies, and there are also coaches that, there are also clinicians and providers who are pivoting to different types of models based on just the acuity of care that's maybe needed, or sort of the spectrum between mental illness and mental health, and what all of that means. And you're a component of that, where you're helping specific owners and providers find the right niche for where they want to practice, and we can't solve everything as much as we'd want to. So you have to kind of make your best decisions about how can I make an impact in the world, and how am I going to position my brand appropriately to do that. And so there's an amazing wave of new companies, private equity money, of course, and tech, in
Hmm.
addition to consumer products. I mean, uh, even like consumer goods like foods and mood chews and all sorts of different things that are benefiting
Yeah,
from a mental health approach to their marketing.
right. Yeah, I mean, the awareness has grown immensely, that I would
Hmm.
say. And people are seeing the opportunity. And I think that there's going to be even more happening with AI developing so fast. And I've been reading actually before we got on about a few articles about the role of AI that's going to play in psychiatry specifically, and how it's going to help develop more specific ways of treatment. So we'll see where it's going to go. But I think that there's going to be huge growth in the next 10 years for sure.
Hmm. I'm still learning about it. I Yesterday, honestly, I did my first Chat GPT experience,
Oh,
and it was so amazing. I mean, I tried to give it a really good prompt, and in 10 seconds, it wrote this LinkedIn post for me that I shared out. And I didn't say it was written by ChatGPT. I just wanted to put it out in the wild. But internally, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you just wrote me 5 compelling paragraphs. And I read it closely. Like, I love to write and I love to edit. So I thought, surely I'm going to have to really tweak this. And, a few
mhm.
words, a few additions. I did a second prompt that was better, but that was on me. It was incredible. Do you want to talk AI a little bit? Do you have a hot take on where you think it's going to go, or where do you think it is right now? Because people are still just dipping their toe into it, like me.
Listen, I'm no expert, but I've been using AI a little bit for content because I use a tool called Uber Suggest, which is owned by Neil Patel. He has an SEO
Yeah.
agency. And so I use it for SEO. And he's had an AI tool there for, I don't know, at least for the last 6 months. And when I am sort of stuck with figuring out an outline for an article, I just put in the keyword and just like it spouts out the different titles and whatever, and it writes it for me, but I don't use the writing itself. I use it as an inspiration more than anything because
Hmm.
it's still a little bit, generic when it comes out. I used ChatGPT only once, just out of curiosity. Um, the one thing I think I wrote about it last week in my newsletter, that it's an interesting thing that some people, and there's also a threat in AI, right? So some people are starting to use Chat GPT as a therapist, right? So they write a prompt and then like wait for a response,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of danger in that. So I'm, you know, in every innovation, I think there's always unintended consequences. So
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of great like things that
Yeah.
can simplify your life, but there's a lot of like danger. So I am trying to look at AI somewhat cautiously and optimistically at the same time.
Hmm.
So it's going to be interesting where it's going to take. I think there's going to be a lot of applications in healthcare that are going to be very interesting. And we'll see. Right now, it's such a new thing. It reminds me. I don't know if you've seen the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix. This was
No,
like 10 years ago.
I
No,
know what
you
you're
should
talking about.
see it. It's
Okay.
yeah. I remember I saw it and I was like, and it was like 2013 or 14 or something like this. And so every time I read about AI, I have flashbacks from this
You
movie.
have
Like it's
flashbacks. Okay.
basically a person falls in love with an AI, you know, software like or operating system that it's on their phone, and it's just amazing. And I it just the whole conversation reminds me of that, to be honest.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I'll have to watch that. I don't want to spoil it for people. I'm curious how it ends and how what the story is. My when I think about AI, and I also use it in this podcast. So we use Riverside FM, and then I throw it over to a service called Descript, and in a
mhm.
minute or two, it'll transcribe our entire conversation, and uh, I'll be curious if it gets Avivit right. I hope it does. I may have to, edit a couple things here or there. It gets 80-90% of it pretty great. And to your point, um, about your writing, you may use the AI prompt or the AI response as inspiration for what you're actually writing, and that gets into the optimist perspective in me, which is that it may even make human art more valuable, because you do have that infusion of your own voice and some way to
Mhm.
authenticate that. But I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, I think there were some deep fakes of songs that sounded like Drake the other day that got millions of
Mhm.
views. And
Oh
so
wow.
it's like, well, if it works, my guess is that, and this will really date me, but my guess is that AI ends up like the character Data on Star Trek. Remember him? Like,
I didn't really watch Star Trek
yeah, yeah,
like that.
yeah. It's such a deep cut, but is this? It's like basically a robotic, autonomous human, and it can do everything, process everything, always has all the information, can spit it out to Captain Kirk or whoever it is. I don't remember all the details, but the point is, it gets to the point where can this person, can this entity, this being, fall in love, and that's sort of where things fall apart sometimes. So we'll see. Yeah, if it's her or Star Trek, we'll see what unfolds. But it's been interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's useful. There's a lot of applications. So pivoting away from AI, I want to talk about something in your life, which is
Mhm.
there's kind of two things that are and aren't connected, but we're going to connect them. So you talk a little bit about branding as a way to prevent burnout or career burnout, and that's an oversimplification that
Mhm.
you can get into. And then you also had a pivotal moment in your life with a fire. And as I was doing homework and research on your perspective and your story, I don't know if maybe you could tell a little bit about that experience as it relates to this idea of sort of the phoenix rising. Like sometimes things in our life burn down, and we talked a lot about career burnout last year, and it continues. You had a personal experience that hopefully you could share a little bit about. But in my mind, it's kind of connected for how we can move through adversity and even some of our trauma, and hopefully move forward in some way. So I would just throw that to you for sort of whatever reaction you have or want to share.
Right. So the event that you're talking about is a house fire that I went through in 2015, that actually put a pause in my business and made me reevaluate everything. And I talked about this event in a presentation in the conference in November. And I sort of, through the lens of this event, I walked the audience through about how to create a message, a marketing message that would resonate with people who have gone through a traumatic event or trauma in general. And, you know, after I lost everything, it was, I did see it as something that happened. I didn't relate the word trauma to it, but it was a devastating moment for me and my family. I lost everything. I used to be a graphic designer, and I started a long time ago, and I had a portfolio that my whole portfolio burned down. So I had no work left.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in that moment. I was like, all right, what do I go from this? So basically, yeah, I have my degree, I have my experience, but like as a designer, somebody who worked in marketing, I don't have anything to show for it. And I sort of had to reinvent myself. And then the way it connected to mental health is that I at some point realized that I needed help to process everything that happened. And I went on Google like everybody does, right? And I was looking for, started with tips of how to process emotionally a fire. It's a very specific event. So I was hoping I would find something. I didn't find anything
Hmm.
really. And this is where I was like, well, the light bulb went up, turned on. And I was like, if I'm looking for something like this, and I'm looking for specific answers. I'm looking for somebody to help me, and I can't find it. There must be a lot of other people. And so I went on, I started looking for a therapist, and the therapist, they were talking. I didn't know how to distinguish, like, who would be good for me, or like what would make sense for me. I didn't relate to the word trauma, as I didn't think of myself as being traumatized. For me, trauma was like, I don't know, war,
Hmm.
rape, like something that's
Hmm.
very, very incredibly tragic and dramatic. So so I started, toying with this idea of like, well, therapists, they need help representing themselves because they need to attract people who need help. And I love the idea of using my skills and experience of, you know, helping in general. Like I said, I wasn't going to become a therapist. So I was like, if I'm gonna do marketing, I'd rather work with businesses that actually do good in the world,
Hmm.
as opposed to sell packaged goods, right? So this is how it all started for me. Um, so when it comes to burnout, it's a little bit similar in a sense that you get to a point of kind of like you don't see a way out. You're so burned out, you just stuck. It's not really like a fire. You lose everything. You don't necessarily lose everything, but you lose kind of the sense of what's next.
Hmm.
And it happens a lot to people when they're really overworked and stressed. And what I notice with therapists, and if you talk to therapists who work in agencies, and if you talk to therapists who have full caseloads because they accept insurance, they burn out very quickly because they see a lot of people, and the people that they see, they don't have control over who they want to work with because they want to help everyone. So everybody who comes in their door, Um, they accept it because they can pay their fees and they have to sustain their business or get the salary. The difference between that and private pay, in my opinion, because private pay you have to market. So when you're marketing, you have much more control of, first of all, how you represent yourself, who you are trying to attract, because everybody has somebody that they like to work with more. I like working with therapists. Some therapists like working more with couples. Others like working more with like children, or it can be as specific as, millennial women. I don't know, whatever it
Mhm.
is. And when you start digging deep, you understand that when you work with people that you enjoy working with, your satisfaction is higher. And you can charge the rates that are fair to you and to the client. And I believe that the outcomes can be better as well. So it's not that it's going to prevent burnout, but it's going to help you reduce a potential burnout in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know
Yeah.
if it makes sense what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
That makes a lot of sense. And you know, you're doing it as a way to, you have to care for yourself as one of the parties in the relationship. If you're going to really be engaged as a therapist, let's say, you have to, care for yourself. And it does take me down a road that, let's say, as a country, we're going to need to do a better job of the safety net that's available for the most complex, sort of rising risk cases around mental illness. And I don't know, there's certainly people out there who that is the segment that they want to work, and that's where they get their maybe life joy or meaning or professional meaning.
Hmm.
And I applaud that. And it's also very taxing work because, as the provider, you're in that relationship, and you try to keep yourself out of the room, in some
Hmm.
strategies, but that doesn't always happen in terms of just what you're hearing and dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I would love for us to see a better safety net being woven for those cases, and then to do the work that you're saying exactly, which is, yeah, position yourself in a way that you can do your best and highest work, with the people you want to work with. I don't think it's selfish. I have that affinity toward people I work with, and I'm very intentional about it. I want to, I've worked with
Right.
all sorts of kinds of people in corporate roles and at creative agencies and healthcare firms, and you just start to see and find the people that maybe resonate with you, and vice versa. So, I mean, I think that's such a valid, strategy to take into a really long term game of what am I going to do, kind of 9 to 5 for a good chunk of my life.
Right. And, I don't think that there's no, you can look at it as something noble to give all of yourself and to give to as many people. And everybody deserves mental health help, I believe. I also think that there's a lot of therapists that are leaving the profession because of burnout. So
Hmm.
that is, at the end, it's a disservice to the whole population.
Right.
So, you can look at your career in stages, maybe like when you're young and you're full of energy and full of this idealistic feeling, you can dedicate yourself much more wholly. But maybe later it's okay for you to say, all right, so now I'm going to work with only a specific population, a specific issues. And, and there are practical things too, like student loans. You have to repay them. Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
have to sustain your lifestyle. You have to, feed your family. That's an important thing.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. There's a marathon metaphor in here. I don't know if you've done any long distance running, but certainly the simple one is that, a sprint is very different than a marathon. But the more
mhm,
nuanced to take is that the number one mistake people make when they're running a marathon is that they go out too fast in the first half.
right.
And so That's a perfect analogy for burnout. If you're, to your point, if you're simply running yourself ragged the first half of the race, you're going to get to that wall. You're going to hit the wall, and the second half of the race is going to be extremely difficult and probably not your best time, because we're just not caring for ourselves in the run. So I agree with you. You know, it's noble to do our best work. It's noble to do difficult things and to tackle obstacles. And at the same time, you have to have the energy and the pace to do that on a regular basis, because that's life. Life is full of that.
Right. And these are the this is how I look at any business and therapy business too. You really have three main resources that you have to consider. It's your time, it's money, and it's your energy. And they're all finite, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to really balance them out. Like, and in some sometimes you have to throw more money at a project or
Mm-hmm.
the time of your life. Sometimes it's more time. When you're starting out, maybe you don't have a lot of money, and so it's your time and energy. So you really have to think about those resources really, and everything stems from there. This is how I look at my own life, because I understand that, energy is something that you have to use sparingly. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of similar to what you were saying about the sprint and a long distance run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use another sort of analogy of, I call it old man basketball. Like when I was young, I used to like dribble drive right through the lane and bang bodies and rebounds, and now it's like a little head fake. It's just an efficient use of the energy. So I don't know, we learn, we get wiser as we go along. Hopefully we get wiser as we go along. So related to this, just took a note on time, money, energy. There's a lot there, and one thing I want to make sure we get to before we wrap is a similar concept, is a perfect transition into people, profit, and promotion, which you're going to be talking about
Hmm.
at this year's conference. Talk a little bit about specifically the synergy between people and profit, and this is all interconnected. But talk a little bit about your perspective on that you're going to bring to this year's conversation.
So the concept of people and profit really stems from my grad school year. So I studied design management, and it was really the philosophy behind it was really that for a business to be sustainable, you have to have three components are equally important: people, profit, and planet. So, and we were talking more about businesses that maybe manufacturing businesses. So you have to be sustainable environmentally. But when I take it to the business of therapy, to mental health, obviously planet is less relevant. But I do see that there's this tendency to say people above profit. Well, I don't believe that people above profit is a sustainable formula for your business, for your private practice, because you know unless you're a nonprofit, right? For a
Mm-hmm.
profitable business, it has to be people and profit, because they're so closely related. Because you know, let's take a private practitioner, solo practitioner as an example. If you are constantly thinking about only as taking as many clients as you want, and you sort of like constantly offering sliding scale, and you know, you can't continue for a long time because your business is not going to be sustainable. Then you're going to be doing basically therapy almost for free,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be burning out in the process. So when you're creating your business, when you're designing your business, it's really important to understand that the people, and you are part of the people category, right, is equally important as profit. Because without the profit, your business is going to be unsustainable. You're going to burn out, you're going to close, you're going to leave the profession. And people who would be your clients will be suffering because they will have less access to mental health help. And when it comes to a component of promotion, I think, without promotion, there's no business
Hmm.
really, right? So it doesn't matter who does the promotion. Either it's insurance company in some way, or it's you who are doing a promotion, right? So I am very excited about talking about this topic because they're all so connected, and I just want to connect the dots between everything, so people will kind of stop thinking in this people first um, way, okay, because it sounds very noble and it sounds like it's the right thing to do,
Hmm.
but I just don't believe that it's sustainable.
Hmm.
So that's my take on it.
Gotcha. And there's something there about scarcity too. The belief in what probably most therapists, I would say, try to help their customers or their clients, their patients see, which is the the beauty of life and the amazing opportunities in front of you that you can and should pursue. And I can't reduce it enough to say that every business should be profitable. Of course not. There's lots of different motives and different people out there doing different things. But the point of profitability as a noble means to sustaining what you're building, helping as many people as possible, putting yourself in a position to succeed at what you're building for yourself. I think that's noble, and I think it's a bright a bright spot of what you're bringing to people who are either transitioning away from maybe the health insurance strategy into private pay, or people who are private pay now and just don't quite have the strategy yet of how to fill up their books and their calendars the way they want. So yeah, I love the work you're doing, and excited to see you again in September and learn more from you. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being on with me today. This has been a really fun conversation. Um, one last thing to ask you, and you can go anywhere you want with it. What's something you're either reading or listening to, like a book or a podcast or a song or an album, anything like that? What's some content you're taking in?
Oh boy. I well, th First of all, thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasant, a very nice conversation, and I'm glad we got to talk about these topics. What I am lately heavily interested in finances.
Hmm.
So I am listening to a podcast. I'm going to tell you, I've been binging. It's a new podcast.
Hmm.
Um, is the Morgan Housel podcast, and he wrote the book, The Psychology of Money.
I was just going to mention that.
And
Such a good book.
yeah, so I haven't read the book yet, but I heard him on another podcast, and I just really enjoy what he was saying. So I've been listening to a lot of that, and I think that finances fascinate me in general. I think, and this is part of what I'm going to be talking to about profit and things like that. And I think that therapists could really benefit from really shifting their mindset towards accepting that part of their business, the financial part of their business. And I just think that it's an important part of our lives, and we don't need to be embarrassed about it. So I really enjoy that.
Hmm. Yeah. Money has so many hooks in it, so many emotional hooks from growing up, and how our parents process money, and sort of that healthy relationship with money, or sort of the residue and the funk that we can get from money. Yeah, the psychology of money. What I'm forgetting the author's name. What's his name? Do you have it?
I'll tell you, Morgan Housel. I think I'm pronouncing it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, that totally changed my mindset about money. I actually want to read it again, and now I'm going to go look him up on the podcast world side of things, because I would love to hear from him on a regular basis. But yeah, the book is fantastic too. I'd highly recommend that. And maybe next time we talk, you also had a great point on LinkedIn about the summer slump, and what therapists and offices might experience in the summer months. And I know you're out there with some great ideas on how to make the most of that time, and probably the financial component is one of that, and marketing strategy is some of that.
Hmm.
So I would just encourage anybody who's listening to look up Avivit for that, those resources too, in addition to all the marketing strategy and digital marketing strategy that you offer. So with that, I guess we'll wrap up. It's been a treat. It's been a real joy to talk with you, Avivit, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.